we are very excited. If you are new to Lose the Cape, my name is Alexa Bigwharf, and Nancy Caviones is my co-host for the podcast.
Hello.
Hey, we run a podcast and we won't be able to hear you, Priya. I'm sorry, but we can say hello to you at this point in time. And then after the webinar is open, I believe we can open it up so that you can actually speak with us if you have questions. But in the meantime, feel free to ask them in the chat. The Lose the Cape podcast is run by myself, Alexa Bigwharf, and Nancy Caviones, and we are committed to talking about topics and things that you may or may not be hearing about in your mom's group or at your, school events or anything like that. So we love to talk about important things that impact us as mothers and as women in general. Tonight, as we have evolved, so when we first started with our first book about 6 years ago, we were writing for basically brand new moms, and we are now evolving into this stage where our children are tweens and rapidly approaching the teen age. And as most of you know who have tweens or teens, there's our book, Lose the Cape, Ain't Nothing But a Teen Thing. As you know, it can get a lot more challenging communicating with your tweens and teens. And so Laura, I'm going to read her bio in just a second, was a contributor to the Lose the Cape, Ain't Nothing But a Teen Thing book, but she also is an expert in communications between parents and tweens and teens and children in general. So we just thought this was a great topic to bring people into, to talk about, especially it's summer, we're all up in each other's space, all over the place. It's just kind of nice to have some tips and resources on how to communicate with our kids while we're all together all the time, and tools that we can use every day, right? So, okay, I'm going to introduce you to Laura, and then we are going to start asking her questions. And at any point in time, if you would like to ask questions, just pop them in the chat, and we will either add them into the conversation as we go along, or we will open it up for an open chat a little bit later in the conversation. So Laura Lyles Reagan is a sociologist and award-winning author. She's a parent, coach, and mentor. Her training as a sociologist taught her that we can consciously define and co-create our families, relationships, and communities in ways that lead us to our most authentic selves while supporting others to grow towards their most authentic selves. So in other words, you can't be fully yourself if you can't be fully you without the other person. So her journey through divorce, single parenthood, and a career in youth development, and the launch of two awesome, powerful young women, her daughters, helped her embrace the creative empty nest, helped her understand how much we all need each other. And she began basically helping people and teens and children working and communicating together. So her coaching practice specializes in families going through times of transition. She does coaching with parents of kids in developmental transitions, tweens, teens, and young adults, teen life coaching, young adults transitioning to college or the world of work, divorcing parents, seeking to co-parent, single parents, women's life coaching. And her first book is all about how you can communicate as parents to your children. And it's called How to Raise Respectful Parents, Better Communication for Teen and Parent Relationships. And it is available in Spanish, which is pretty awesome. So her whole focus is helping parents learn how to practice co-creation communication skills for parents of teens or young adults so that they can learn to tune into one another. And I'm sure you all understand what this moment is like when you're trying to get your kid to do something, whether they're a younger child or a tween or a teen, and you feel like you're just absolutely like this, like two ships passing in the night and it's just not happening. You're not getting that information across to each other. So how is tonight we're going to cover some of the tools that you can use to help you speak to your children in a way that they're actually going to listen to you and to respond. So hello, Laura. Thank you so much for being with us tonight.
Hey there. Thank you so much for hosting this. It's exciting.
Yeah, I mean, we're getting ready to get into the thick of the tween and teenagers, so very timely for both Alexa and I.
Great.
Absolutely. And
Great.
I think summertime just really like brings this to a head, because all of a sudden we go from having our normal routines, from having the kids outside of the house for a large majority of the day. All of a sudden we are all together, and it may bring a little bit of anxiety of how we're going to communicate with each other. How did you handle it when you had your kids home? And what
Right.
tips you can help us with let's just start there.
Well, I think that we all kind of get a little nostalgic, right? When they hit their teens, we've only got 4 or 5 summers at best, and then it's all over, right? They're off to college or the world of work, we hope. And this time with boomerang kiddos, that might not be the case. So there's this wonderful expectation that we're going to have this bonding experience over vacation and summer camps and, all this heartwarming stuff going on. And then reality sets in.
Right.
And with tweens and teens, they want to catch up on sleep. They want to stay on their phones forever and stay connected with their friends. And they may or may not be too particularly interested in this, last stage bonding with you. And so the expectations may have this tension involved, right? Their hope to relax and take it easy on the summer, and our hope to connect and have some meaningful experiences that may be like internships or volunteerism or even a summer job. Those may be some of the things that are going on for teens. This day and age, teens have a lot of pressure to prepare that college resume with a whole list of volunteer experiences and connections, internships, and even try to tackle summer jobs. So they feel a lot of pressure. They're tired from the school year, and it creates, some tension.
Right. Absolutely. Right. Okay, so let's just get into it. When we are struggling with our kids, and really, like I have a hard time with my kids because I don't often feel that they're listening to me, and I get really agitated really quickly. So what are some of the ways that we can not just jump to yelling at our children?
Right. Not resort to the high volume.
Right.
Because
exactly.
we don't think that we're getting through.
Exactly.
Well, first and foremost, I think it's about relationship building these days. Dr. Shafali talks about Jaspari, who is Oprah's parenting expert, says this generation will only tolerate co-creation. And what I mean by that fancy word of co-creation is that they have equal responsibility for building the relationship with you as you do building the relationship with them. But that requires engaging them, getting them to open up and talk a little bit and share about where they are. And so what all of that means is that the authoritarian do as I say, do it now because I said so, that just doesn't cut it with this generation. And it's not because they're rebellious or manipulative. It is because the world is truly more complicated. They're exposed to so much so early digitally. And even if you're monitoring that and trying to stay involved in that, their expectations of communication are different. So I think that first piece of how do you get them to listen to you is to listen to them, right?
Yeah.
And it sounds like a misnomer. I mean, it sounds like an obvious thing that if we want to be heard, that we have to listen. But that's the only way they're going to get it is by modeling it. So I really help parents do what we call active listening. And for me and my girls, one of the best times to do that was in the car going somewhere because they weren't focused on eye to eye, and so they weren't intimidated. And there was a lot of opening up. They would talk about their best friends and what boy they liked and what music they were into, and there was just all this, rattling on and on about the teen life and what they were into, and it was rich stuff. And I would, repeat like a psychiatrist the last 2 or 3 words of what they were saying, like, oh, so you like so-and-so, and that would bring forth some more information. And they would share about what the best friend was, how they were handling, a particular grade or a teacher or whatever. And it allowed me to get inside their lives and then use some of the other skills to share maybe some of my core values.
Yeah, that's so true. I love, love, love driving the car because even though my children are younger, well, my oldest is 12 now, so he's going into seventh grade, so he's definitely getting up into that age. But I have a rising fourth grader and a rising second grader, and even with them, like I glean so much about what is happening in their lives from just listening to them talk to
Yeah.
their friends in the back of my car. Not even me like asking them questions, just like listening to them. But yeah, that's a great point.
And then once we're, doing the conversation and actually talking about or hearing where they're coming from, when I want to share what is on my heart, in order to not call up their defensiveness, I use what we call I messages. And that's I feel X about Y.
Oh, yes.
It's that simple little formula. And you can put that into practice today. I feel X about Y. Yeah. Meaning I am so proud that, you helped your sister instead of fight with her. I am really disappointed you didn't take out the trash until after I nagged you 3 times about it. I don't want to be nagging. That keeps us from barking, and it communicates clear messaging. But it also, when you're talking about heartfelt things, like the boyfriend, like the digital uses, like the dangers involved, it shares that the relationship is more meaningful to you than the discipline, if you know what I'm saying. And the relationship is what cuts through everything.
So I'm curious about this. How does, I hear some people talking about like how they don't want to be angry. They don't want to be angry or overreactive with their children, but they want to almost make their children like understand when they disappoint them. Do you feel like using things like I'm so disappointed in your behavior is harmful, or is that a good I message?
Yeah, I think that can be used as a shaming thing,
Yeah.
And I think that's one of those fine line pieces. It depends on if you've laid the groundwork for that conversation. Hey, we've talked about this before. What do we need to do to get past this? Because I don't want to be on your back nagging. Because then it's a we problem solving situation rather than me as parent authority trying to get you to do something that complies with what I believe is right. And I always, when parents are afraid that that's causing permissive parenting, I always talk about, but we want to prepare them for the future, right? And the only way they're going to get there is by having these kind of conversations with us or a teacher or another adult. They have to hear, how do you problem solve together? Think about the world of work. Team building is it for corporations right now. And where do you get those skills to converse and negotiate if you're not introduced to them early?
Oops, sorry, I muted myself. That's kind of one of the things that I feel too. Like, I mean, I understand why someone would say that it's a good it's better for your children to tell them that, your actions have really disappointed me. But I feel the same way. I'm glad that you said that about shaming. Like, I really do think that's it could be more harmful than helpful, especially when you're trying to build that.
I think that sometimes when we say, like, I'm so disappointed, we're, like, centering ourselves and making it about how we feel instead of about the actual issue at hand, which is that they were doing something that was, like, not healthy for them.
Yeah, it becomes about pleasing the parent, right?
Right.
And so, how does that help you in adulthood to please your parent? That doesn't teach you a skill. So I usually try to talk about engaging, letting go, and letting the natural consequences of a behavior affect the child, or engaging and saying, okay, how are we going to solve this problem? I don't want to be nagging, or I don't want to be dealing with this all the time.
Yeah. I mean, I think that what has been really, I have an almost 11-year-old, and I'm really surprised at the issues that I'm dealing with now. I feel like I was thinking today that I feel like she is now where I was at 13.
Right.
Like so one of the things that I have been trying to do is practice empathy. Like letting her grapple with her feelings
Mm-hmm.
instead of like putting my feelings in there, because I like really try to force myself to remember what it was like.
Right.
To be that age.
Thanks so much, Nancy, for bringing this up, because that's what the conscious parenting movement is all about. It's about tuning into ourselves and our emotions so that we don't project that onto the kid, but that they feel who they are fully and have the opportunity to grow and stretch and become who they're supposed to be,
Right.
and their personality. And you model that, right?
Right. And also to know that like it's normal to feel the way that you're feeling. Sometimes I'll say to Alice, my daughter, I'll be like, I know exactly how you're feeling right now because I remember when I was in a similar situation.
Right.
Like, so I think that like helps her get past her anxiety of talking about it with me.
Exactly. And I think that also builds the opportunity that all of that good relationship building and the empathy piece is laying the foundation for when they're confronting real life issues outside too, so that they come to you and say, okay, Mom, how did you deal with this? Or what do I do when? Because you've laid all that groundwork, they open up.
Yeah. And I think that I have realized in the past few months that like there are low stakes opportunities coming up at this age that allow me to kind of practice for the bigger things that are coming later.
Right.
Things maybe that are not necessarily about like her behavior or her emotions or things like that, but just other things that like she is feeling badly about or something.
Sure. I agree. It's also, every interaction counts, right? And if we want them to come to us in the future with issues like substance abuse or digital dangers, or boyfriend trauma, then we have to lay the groundwork now and be good listeners and good communicators now.
I'm glad that you brought up the digital danger thing, because I just had that experience this week when I found something in her browser history, and I didn't say anything to her, but I tightened up my parental controls because I didn't know like what to do. On the one hand, I think that what she was looking at was normal. She was just curious. But on the other hand, I was like, is this worth the conversation? Do I, so I don't know if she knows that I know, but.
Right. Well, it depends on what, parameters y'all set up. Does she know that you're going through her history? Yeah, okay, so she knows it. So it's fair game.
Well, we monitor her iPod.
Okay.
But I don't know if she knows that, like, I also monitor her browser on her laptop. She was using my laptop.
Oh, gotcha. Gotcha. Well, then that's fair game.
I might have to go searching through the browser right now to see what's going on.
What I hear a lot from parents is about digital addiction. Just being on the phones all the time.
Yes.
And we now know it's dopamine hit after dopamine hit after dopamine hit. So I talk to parents about delaying as long as you can.
Yeah.
The entry into that world, and it's hard.
It is hard. It's very hard. We finally just gave our 12-year-old a phone, and that's not even a fully functional phone. It only works on Wi-Fi.
Right.
And he's got basically, how Facebook now, I don't know if you know this or not because your children are older, but they have a kids messenger app basically where you can select people that they're allowed to speak with over the messenger app, which is really cool because we have a select number of friends that they're allowed to talk to, that their parents have also set up the kids messenger app, and then they can talk to like their grandmother and their aunts and other people like that. And we set that up because we don't have a home phone, and we wanted a way for our children to be able to call us because our son is now old enough that we leave him home for an hour or two here and there by himself, but we don't have a home phone, so we needed a way for him to be able to communicate with us. But now I'm having to face that same like now that he has the phone, he wants to be able to, and I love iPhones in this respect, and that is that they give you so much control over what is happening on your child's phone. I have to approve every single app he wants to put on there. I can limit his time on the phone to an hour a day if I want to. But it's so true though, like this addiction, like now that he has a phone, he wants to be on his phone all the time. And I mean, talk about a communications barrier.
Yeah,
Now
it really is. It really is.
Yeah.
It really can be. And so the idea is setting up limitations, and the older they get, the more independent and assertive they are about their time on their devices, and there's that sense of possession. But it's important to remind them, are you paying for it? Is this part, then you have to go to work to pay for it. It's a gift, and then you have to be respectful of other people in your life because we miss you. We want you to have family time, and you set up those boundaries about when it can and can't be used. But at the same time, it's about personal regulation too, right? Mm-hmm. So I scripted a conversation for a parent the other day about how to broach this subject of addiction and say, you're surrendering your control to all the people that are on the phone right now and the advertisers on the phone. And hopefully that hooks that defiant teenager, to say, wait a minute, I want choices over my own life and what I do, and not just do what the device is telling me to do,
we actually have a question from Priya in the chat. She said, must we wait for them to come to us, or maybe start conversations about things like this ourselves, initiate them ourselves?
Yeah, I think if it's really a two-way street and we're co-creating this relationship together and we're solving problems together, then of course the parent can come straight to them. Absolutely. I feel X about Y. I'm concerned about this, and here's why. And invite the conversation as non-judgmentally as you can, and then you're able to share your value system.
How old is your son, Priya? I'm just curious. He's 17. Okay, so that's a little bit of a different scenario than a 12-year-old, because you now have a fully independent child, basically, and almost an adult. So that to me makes it a different situation.
Yeah.
But this is also a really important summer, right? Because it's his last summer at home, just as any 17-year-old. And so you want to make those conversations count and be as meaningful as you can. But it's also about having fun, guys. My own research in my book, I did a research project about what impacts kids about what adults do. And there were 4 things that were mission critical to kids. And number 1 was fun. Do fun activities with me. That's how you get in. And they reported that themselves. 2, solve problems together. And that could be from homework. That could be we lost the dog. That could be I can't find my phone. It's in the laundry hamper. Whatever the problem is, solve problems together. That means you're present and you're there. 3 is a sense of protection. I can always go home. There's a safe place for me. If I'm bullied, I know where to go, that kind of thing. And 4 was present in crisis. Even 10 and 12-year-olds told us, I knew my dad, who didn't live with me, still cared about me, because when I lost my dog, he came over and we drove all night calling for him.
Oh.
And we found him. And that story, is related to us in the research because she felt impacted by her dad's commitment to what was important to her.
Yeah, absolutely.
Those 4 things. So fun counts, guys. Use the summers to have fun.
It's so true. When I find that our children, like, we really, really bond when we're doing fun things together. Like today, we spent the day at the pool together, and I think that those things, I don't have a lot of memories like that with my parents, because they were both very, very busy working full time. My dad was in the military. He was deployed a lot. I was raised in the 80s and the 90s. He was gone to war a good chunk of time, with the first Gulf War and all those kinds of things. But my biggest memories are when we went canoeing at the lake together, when we had our picnics, when we played
Right.
baseball in the backyard as a family. You know, I don't remember
The simplest things. They
the
don't cost
simplest
money.
things that
Yeah,
I
they
just
don't cost
remember
money.
those moments. Well,
Yeah.
you know, you mentioned earlier, and I don't want to forget this because I think it's important to talk about. We do hear, you mentioned the conscious parenting movement, and we hear a lot about conscious parenting. So how does conscious parenting differentiate between co-creation, and what's kind of the difference between those two subjects, topics, however
Right.
you
Well, conscious parenting talks about tuning into ourselves, right? So that one, we don't project our old traumas onto our kids, that we allow them to be their authentic selves and we support that process. And then two, that we are, consciously supporting them as they grow. So it's one is preventing our stuff from kind of glumping onto them like
yeah
sticky glue. And then the other is just to simply give them the love and support they need. But the thing is, many of us did not grow up in what would be perceived today as a healthy home. For me, example, I grew up in an alcoholic home and my parents divorced. And I divorced myself. But that doesn't mean my relationship with my kids isn't any more important. In fact, it may be even more important because you're the only one at home, right?
right
And so because I didn't grow up with those models, I had to learn them. I had to go to therapy. I got to use some of my training as a sociologist. And I had to grow those skills about being in tune with my emotions and sharing those openly, and then supporting someone else through their own emotional process and regulating my own emotions so that they had a model for regulating theirs. None of that comes simply or easy. It was a learned behavior. And if you didn't grow up that way, you need to kind of learn those skills. Your chakras can be aligned, you can be all prayed up and loved up. And if you never had a model for that, then you don't know what that looks like. So that's why I wrote the book. Is co-creation is about communication skills from that mindset. And they're simple, but they're profound, and they take practice to put into play. Sometimes it's awkward to try them and do them, but I've had the most gratifying experience watching parents practice these and seeing their relationships soften and grow and transform.
Wow. Should we pivot and talk about how to use the summer as an opportunity for building that relationship and to prepare kids for the future without the nagging and the hassling and stuff like that? Like what could we do this summer, during the summer?
Well, it's never too late to start, right? It's engaging the teen in what they want their summer to look like. Rather than we prescribe it and we have to figure it all out and push and be those helicopter parents, it's about, what do you want to do this summer? And usually you hear them, I want to sleep late. Okay, that makes sense, right? Because kids need a lot of sleep and they're getting up at crazy hours early to go to school, and that's okay. All right, so we're going to bump the day back. That doesn't mean you get to stay in bed forever, but I get it. You need some rest. So map out what that schedule looks like together and get buy-in together about what that might be. And then you have learned about your kids. You know your kids the best. So you advocate for them the best of anybody probably on the planet. What are their interests? One of the things that I got to do with my youngest, my oldest went to camps and all kind of things. My youngest, by the time she came around, there were two of us and I was divorced and the income was less. So we had to get a little bit more creative about what her summers looked like. And I had a friend that was close to their veterinarian, and she got, my youngest, Grace, got to go do a veterinary internship free. She got to watch surgeries, and she was real interested in animals. Today she's a horse trainer in Maryland.
Wow.
So that fed her, that process. She did that when she was 14 or 15, I believe.
That's really cool.
And it doesn't cost money, guys. You simply use your networks to figure out what they're interested in. We did the same thing with my nephew. He was wanting to talking about law school. So he went into a law firm and got to sit in court and ask a bunch of questions of the lawyers and sit at the desk, with the lawyer up front and participate in handing the papers to the bailiff or and be engaged in that way. And that lasted for 2.5 months for him. So I think that figuring out what your kid's interested in, interviewing them with those open-ended questions and those skills, again, that are mentioned in the book and some of my materials. I even did a blog for this webinar, right, about open-ended questions that could be used to kind of interview about what you want to shape your internship like. And if there's not something formal that you can do, then you go visit places together.
Yeah, it's interesting because we live in South Carolina, which is like super historically rich country. I mean, large parts of the Revolutionary War happened here. We started the dang Civil War, so there's lots of stuff to go see and do. And I found, I'm a big history buff, and I thought, they're only 7, 9, and 12. They're not going to think this is interesting, but they do. They can if you get out and go look at things and talk about things and why things happen. I'm just giving an example of something that we can do around here that gives them the opportunity to kind of experience local elements and still, do something and get out of the house. But, that being said, the reality is, like, we can go take them to parks, we can take them to the pool like we do, we can take them to historical things, but like there's a lot of real dangers that are in their world every single day. We were at the swimming pool today with some friends, and my girlfriend was telling me her son's a freshman in high school, and apparently like cutting, like self-mutilation is like a big thing right now for that age group. How do we, it's one thing to say, I'm going to take them on fun trips and we're going to do things and we're going to have fun together, but how do we keep them from the dangers that are happening? How do we talk about those? How do we talk about drugs and, sex and cutting each other and all those crazy things that are happening?
Yeah, and they are crazy, and they take, each new generation has its own cluster of behaviors that are scary and different. So our parents said the same thing about things that were scary to them, that were
wearing makeup with long hair, playing guitars, It
may not have been perceived as harmful then, but it was, outlined. So I always like to kind of say there is historical perspective to this, ever since teenagers were born, if you will, when kids drove cars and got driver's license and moved literally away from the parent, then things, look different, and scary and different. So there is this generational piece to it. But there are also very real dangers. The digital dangers is one, bullying's another, school shootings, cutting, sexting, that touched our lives in our home. Yeah. So we had to bring those relationships, make the virtual relationship real and talk about what safe dating was like. I think anything, again, can be an opportunity for relationship building, and behavior exists for a reason. Kids are asking for some kind of attention, or they're asking for help in negotiating the scary differences in the world that they see. Mm-hmm. So for me, it's all about engaging and talking about it. When I learned that, and I can do this, my daughter's a young adult, and I asked her permission first if I could share this, so I like to say that first. When I found, inappropriate material that on her phone, and that her boyfriend could have been seen as an offender, Mm-hmm. What we did was bring that relationship to a real place instead of a virtual place, because those are risks that you would not necessarily take at that particular age in person, that she was willing to do, on the phone, because it didn't seem real. Yeah. So we invited him to lunch and we talked about it, and he came. I was really excited about that. What a courageous thing to do as a young man, right? Yeah. And I had to honor that, and say, I don't agree with what you guys did, but, connecting is a wonderful thing and it's a normal thing. So let's talk about ways we can connect that are safe and don't get you in trouble.
Yeah.
And it took me some time to get there, guys. At first I was scared and then I got angry, but I didn't give that to her. What I did is I said, I need a break and I need to think about what I'm going to do, and created some space for myself before we then talked about how we could work on this problem together. And it worked out. Guess what? He went to lunch, and then a month later, they're no more. That she's on to the next guy. So that was okay.
That worked out well.
Anyway, right? And very normal too. So, real stuff happens, but it's all an opportunity to build that relationship. So I would say, while there are some mental health issues that may need an external person, a mental health professional to be involved, that's okay. Mm-hmm. That's good. Get them the help they need. And then just use this as an opportunity to connect on a deeper level. What can I do to help you deal with this crazy world?
Yeah. Well, so beyond just the true attention getting, I feel, I could be wrong, but I feel like when I was a teenager, which seems like a long, long, long time ago, when kids resorted to things like cutting or things of that nature, like they were attempts at getting attention, I think, like often.
And they could be getting attention, or it could be a mental health issue that's brewing underneath a depression or anxiety, that they don't know how to regulate these big emotions, or the self-esteem issue, or the disapproval of the boyfriend, or I'm not popular with the peer group. There's a lot there, and it's complicated.
Yeah.
So I think parents need to be willing to get some help, and dissect that. And there's just no reason to not find help. There's great resources out there.
Yeah.
Read a lot. Of course, I'm interested in assisting with coaching and problem solving, but there are times when the problem's bigger than we are, and we just need some assistance with it.
Yeah, that's really true.
And it's all about degrees, right? Are they experimenting with pot for the first time, or have they been progressively using and it's now becoming a problem?
Yeah.
Was it a one-time cutting attempt that, hey, my friend that's truly depressed did it, so I wanted to see what the big deal was, Is it experimental behavior, or is it something that they're slipping into as a ongoing behavior? But every behavior has a reason, and if they're coming to us, that means they're willing to engage, and that's a trust-building opportunity, and we can all grow from it.
Okay, so mental health issues aside, I think we can all agree that our children, from basically about 2 years on until, whenever, like to push our buttons and push us and all those kinds of things. So what do we do when, having fun isn't enough, bonding isn't enough, trying to create these relationships isn't enough, when we are just butting heads and not like having these great conversation moments, not being able to get through to them? What do you suggest when your teen is just pushing those buttons? Beyond a meditation.
I follow the same tactic that I used to follow when my kids were toddlers. I would say to myself, "The only three, the only three, the only three."
Right. But what you're saying underneath that, Nancy, is it's not about me. It's about this wonderful, precious person here who's going through a tough time, whatever that tough time is, the hormonal swings, the peer pressures that they're feeling, the not feeling accepted. They're all regulating all of this stuff inside. And so they need us to stand strong, whether that's to hold the boundary about, nope, sorry, you can't have that, just like when they were 2 and 3, or tell me what you need right now. Do you need me to hear you? Do you need a break? Do you need some time alone? What's going on for you? So again, it's not personal. Act like the robot. We're unaffected. Find that Zen place, even if you don't feel it inside. On the outside, you can be sort of robotic, because it's about what's going on inside of them. And I think that's the heart of co-creative communication skills, as a heart of conscious parenting, is I'm responsible for me, you're responsible for you. And even though I'm a loving mom who wants to help you be the best you can be, you're still responsible for regulating yourself and dealing with all that big stuff that's going on. And I want to give you a wonderful, beautiful world, but guess what? That's not happening. So all you can do is learn how to control what's in here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
I mean, get that from us.
I mean, I've been trying to work with one of my daughters on how she copes with extreme disappointment or frustration.
Right.
You know, because sometimes she'll like act out, you know, and like the best thing that I've been able to come up with, which I think is not that effective, is it's okay for you to feel this way. It's not okay for you to throw stuff across the room.
Right.
But I don't know like what to, you know, but I don't think that that's like been effective. Like I don't know like what to say to make it clear that she is responsible for how she expresses her frustration in a way that doesn't hurt the people around her.
Right, right. And I think each child is different, right? They have their own personality. My youngest had an anxiety issue, and both my daughters were into horses big time. Well, actually, both of them had anxiety during a different time of their lives. You know, one that was related to our divorce and changes that were going on, and the other was related to school changes. So it had a different root, but they were also very much involved with horses. They rode horses. We had one, and that was like the safe place. It's where the boyfriend couldn't go. It's where the phone couldn't go. You know, it was the nature. So I think learning what their thing is and where they can deal with stress is probably really key at this age. Probably they learn it first when they're tweens, you know, about the self-regulation when the hormones first hit. And you know, you have to help them find what that release is for them. For some kids, it's meditation, and they're able to do the yoga thing, and they get really into it. Detention centers, there's articles now about detention centers that are using this with kids and having phenomenal results, and they're getting all of this self-regulation stuff about, I don't care what happens out there, I'm okay in here. But that might not work for every kinesthetic child that needs the activity. You know, if it's an ADDer and they've got to change the channel 20, you know, off and on all the time, they need something else. You know, they may need a sport. It's just finding what works for that child and talking about it with them. What will help you deal with what you're feeling right now? Well, I don't know. Okay, take a break. We're going to come back and address this in a few minutes. You know, it's not sugar. It's not lack of sleep. You know, we've got to find the pieces that work for you, and it is an experiment and different for every kid.
It's so hard.
It is hard. It is hard. Which is why these conversations are so important, right? These kind of conversations are so important.
Absolutely.
That we're not alone.
So, okay, you've written the book, How to Raise Respectful Parents, and now you've told us that you are coming out with a brand new course called Turn Your Teen Around by Tuning Into Yourself.
Right, exactly. It's exactly.
Explain.
Explain. Well, it's really what we were talking about with the conscious parenting movement, right? That if I am practicing good self-regulation skills, then they can too. They have that model for doing it, even though they may do it differently than I do, or their triggers may be different, or their solutions may be different. They've at least seen how it gets done. So this self-care piece is so important. Tuning into ourselves, being able to name what our feelings are. I don't just feel mad, glad, or sad. You know, I can feel happy and elated and proud, and you know, that whole gamut of words that can be used to describe feelings. And boys may not be as articulate as girls at a certain age, you know, so they might find other ways to express emotion. But what the course does is goes through all of these communication skills one at a time, helps you learn them, and then helps you practice them. It applies them to your family's life. And we move through each one of these communication skills. It's a 7-module course that will drip, and I'm super excited to offer today. It's open pre-registration. And it's going to be normally $4.99, but I'm offering it to our tribes, Raise Respectful Parent Tribe and the Lose the Cape Tribe for $2.97. So it is a $200 discount.
No,
That's a
that's super generous.
Yeah. That's good.
I'm excited about it.
Should we bring up that question that Janine asked?
Yeah, I'm going to see what
happens. I love this question.
I'm going to see what happens when we press answer live. It may.
Alexa's going to answer it.
Oh, shoot. I don't want to answer it. Okay.
But let's talk about it.
So hold on, Janine, answering the question, how would you feel about us pulling you in here so that you can ask the question? Because we're getting down towards the last 10 or 15 minutes. I'd love for you all to have the opportunity to ask Laura questions live. Do you want to hop in here with us, or do you want us to just ask her the question? I'm going to allow her to talk and see what happens. Okay. We brought you in. This is so cool. Let me unmute you here. Okay. Oh, it won't. There we go. Okay. Hey, Janine.
Hi, Janine.
Hey.
All right. Go ahead and ask your question.
Okay. My question is, how do you deal with lying? I have an almost teenager, and sometimes he'll lie about really silly stuff, like, yes, I cleaned up my room when he clearly didn't, or bigger stuff, like I have a homework assignment and then I'm telling him, that he needs to write it down and keep it on his schedule, and then, I already did that at school, and then I get an email from the teacher saying that did not happen.
Right. What does he say when you talk about it with him? When you confront the line?
Well, sometimes he'll just get angry and walk away, like fight, flight, freeze response, or he'll stay and just argue with me that, yes, he did do the assignment, and I clearly tell him, well, your teacher is not sending an email and lying to me about it, so let's figure this out. Let's work on this, because I don't want your grade to
It's
fail.
interesting, actually, Janine and Laura, because I have a very similar situation happening with my 12-and-a-half-year-old, where I will ask him, did you do your homework? And he tells me yes. And then I go check his homework grades a week later, and he's got all zeros. I'm like, what happened here? This is a great question, Janine.
Right.
I'm totally on board with getting an answer on this one.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank you.
I don't know that I have the magic bullet. I can tell you that my youngest had this issue. My oldest was, kind of the star child of the high achiever, and the youngest was the creative one that made up these marvelous stories, that were very, very creative. We finally got to the place where natural consequences had to take hold. She needed to fail the grade. She needed, and I don't mean the overall school year grade, but she needed to fail that particular test and struggle with the natural consequences, and then kick in, okay, what do you need to do better in school? And sometimes it's the policing that they're rebelling against, and the issue is about the independence, and other times, it's really truth telling. So I was honest about it. It was like, I don't want to be in this policing role. I resigned that. I don't want to do that. So how are you going to be responsible for your own work? And at first she failed, and then she found systems that worked for her, but she had ownership of it. You know what I'm saying? Rather than me dictating what the system needed to be, she then took it on. So I think sometimes we have to allow kids to fail.
Yeah. I mean, when I was a kid, I was such a bad liar. I was such a prolific liar that when I was about 9 years old and my eyesight was kind of going bad a little bit, my father didn't believe me at first, and he would try to like trick me. So he would say something like, he would put me on the spot, and he would say something like, read that thing far away. You know, because he like couldn't figure out if I was lying or telling the truth. You know, so
You were the daughter who cried wolf.
Yeah, right. He made me listen to that record. Like the classical, he made me listen to it and read the story. So, I mean, at some point, I like grew out of it. Like I stopped doing it. Now I've gone so far in the other direction. It's like not funny. But I really try to, you know, keep this in mind when I'm dealing with the same thing with my kids and how it felt to have somebody not trust me. And so I use that with my kids. I say, you know, it's very hard for me to trust what's coming out of your mouth right now.
Right. And see, there you are using our messages. Great.
Right. You know, and someday you're going to need real help, and you're not going to get it because I'm so used to you lying.
Right.
Priya says you need to have their friends call them out on their BS. So I'm not sure if he's having any lies that his friends would call him out on yet. But
yeah, that's that peer pressure. But I think, you know, and I just like, you know, just try to like, still trying to figure out like what it is that compels kids to lie. I mean, are they like, I don't, you know, like, especially when they lie about stupid things where it's easy to find out if they're lying or not.
I know. I struggle with this so much with 2 of my 3 children.
In the closet?
No. Yeah, it's just like, do they not know that we could tell if they took the garbage out or not? I mean, or do they think, are they testing us to see if we're really paying attention?
Right.
In many ways, yeah, I think it is. It's how far can I push and will the boundary still be there? And that creates, you know, trust over time. But the other question, you know, that Janine brought up is really real. How do I live in the real world? And my gut is saying, you know, it's about letting them deal with the natural consequences of their behavior.
Yeah. I think there's some real truth to that.
And if the offense is about schoolwork, then let the schoolwork fall and struggle and be willing to go to the teacher conference. You know, my kid is not an extension of myself. My kid is simply who they are.
Yeah.
And if they're going to struggle in school, then they're going to struggle in school. And we're going to get the resources they need to get the help they need, but it's still their job to make it work.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm very like hands off when it comes to my kids' homework. Mm-hmm. But number one, I have 3 kids. I don't have time to sit with them all every night.
Right.
Over them and make sure they do their homework. So if I ask them, you know, have you done your homework? And they say no, and I say, well, I mean, you're gonna have to explain that to your teacher. I mean, I'm not gonna like sit here and have a fight with you about doing your homework. Because
that's my tactic as well, Nancy. That's the resolution we came to about it. And she actually changed high schools because she struggled. You know, there were also health issues at the time, but she had to deal with it. You know, she had to change the high school and not be in that advanced curriculum. And guess what? It all worked out okay. Her calling was this horse training thing anyway. She was going to an equine college and not the academic success college. Right. Not that she couldn't do it smart-wise, but because that's where her heart was. So it's about letting our kids be their kid, who they are, and dealing with the consequences that come.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Well, we have a couple minutes. We've got a few people still left on the call. Is there anyone who wanted to ask Laura a specific question? If you are brave enough to hop in the room with us, we will have you come directly in here like we did with Janine, or otherwise you can just post the question in the chat. And if you don't have any questions while we're waiting, let's just talk a little bit more about your course. I know you described it, but here's your opportunity to really sell it to everybody.
Sell it. Well, the exciting thing is my book is actually written to teens. Raise Respectful Parents is the teen version. It's about what would happen if you landed on the planet and you didn't know what was going on in this crazy family of yours? Because who here didn't feel like they belonged? I did. You know, in our teen years. So that's the book. And then the course is the complement to that. You know, it's about the parent, for the parents.
Oh,
so even though the book is designed with exercises at the end that the parent and teen can do together, the book is really written to the teen so that they can learn these communication skills. And then the course is for the parent. So it's done, you know, as most online courses are, modules at a time. There's 7 of them, and each one introduces a new communication skill, and you work on the exercise. There's a workbook through it all about how to apply that inside of your relationships with your teens. So it's basically what I do, the coaching package that I do with parents about communication, and what I do with teens, because I work with teens and parents together to build that relationship. And I tell them that, you know, my client isn't the parent, my client isn't the teen, it's the relationship itself. And that's what the course is. It's the parent version of the book.
That's great. All right. Well, everybody's being shy. Thank you, Janine, for asking that question and for chatting with us. So we said we would give a couple copies away of both your book and our book. So how should we do this? Should we?
Everybody that's here gets one. How's that?
We could do it that way. Janine was actually a contributor to the Lose the Cape book, so we won't send her one of those books, but we will be sure to send her one of your books. Okay, well, that's awesome. I'm happy with sending out books to everybody. So if you all want to, just message us. Let's put our email address in here. Info. Okay, Nancy's going to do that. If you send us a message with your with your mailing address, we will be happy to send you copies of Laura will send you copies of her book, and we will send you copies of the Lose the Cape Teen Thing book. It's the Teen Thing book is fun. It's kind of just a collection of fun stories from either parents who have been through the teen world already are getting ready to embark upon it, kind of some survival tips, I guess, if you will, to prep you for the tween and teen years. And then Laura's book, as she just described it, is for parents and the teen, but is largely written for the teen on the communication side, correct?
Correct.
Right. All right. Well, this has been fun. We are going to send out the recording to everybody. So if you missed anything or had to step away, you will get to enjoy the replay, as well as anybody who couldn't be here live. Thank you so much for those of you who were here live with us. Don't forget to go check out her offer. And even if it's not the right offer for you right now, please you can grab that link and share it with your friends if it's, if you know of somebody who may need it. I have several friends who could use this desperately right now. So
great. I love hearing that.
Yes. Okay. Anybody have any last minute things? Laura, do you have any last minute things that you'd like to share?
We will keep that $200 discount up all month. So there's a couple of weeks to grab that. If you're, you can use that link, is what I'm saying, until the course drops. I won't be advertising it all that time, so only the ones that are getting the link now would be able to use it. But you should be able to take advantage of that fairly quickly.
It'll be in the replay email.
Yes, right. Okay, absolutely. Great. Thank you.
Now, does your course, is it all self-paced, or are you doing like
it's all self-paced. Yeah, it drops one at a time.
Okay. All right,
so
great.
You finish one, do the exercises, and come back for the other.
Do you also offer one-on-one coaching if people want to call directly to you?
I do. Thanks for saying that. I sure do. And it can be with the teen and the parent, and that's been a lot of fun, and we've seen wonderful transformation and softening in those relationships. Or it can be just the parents. I also offer online group coaching, and I have a group for parents of young adults too, not just parents of teens. So there's a parent of teens group that's going on, and there's one for parents of young adults that are launching to college or the world of work, because those boundaries and conversations are a little bit different too.
I wish that there had been someone in my world who was doing this kind of stuff when I was a teenager, because I think learning as a tween or a young adult how to communicate, how to express yourself, how to share your emotions and what's bothering you or not bothering you. Like, I think those are some of the best skills that you can possibly ever give to a person.
Absolutely.
And, not having those skills has plagued me for my entire life, and now I'm having to learn them as an adult. So I think it's so great what you do.
I'm blessed to have a best friend who is 2 years older than me and male. And when he read the book, he started crying. And he said, every teenager and young adult needs this, because these are the skills we're all struggling with in business, in marriage, and whatever. He says, this is it, Laura, this is it, because we need it. Yeah. It's just that simple. And that's why I wrote it, is because I needed it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Say you have to write the book that you need.
Exactly. The book that I wanted to read, right? Growing up in an alcoholic home, I didn't have these skills. I knew my parents loved me. I knew they wanted the best for me and they would support me, but they weren't good communicators, Yeah. So, yeah, we all need that.
Well, it is wonderful. Thank you so much for everyone who was here tonight. We'll be sending your books out to you. We're very excited to share that with you. Please go click over and look at her course. Check that out. And we're just very grateful for all of you and for your time on a Sunday evening or afternoon, late afternoon. I suppose it is way on the West Coast. This has been
it's about 7 o'clock.
Okay, so it's officially evening all the way across the United States now. It's officially bedtime on the East Coast. So.
I can go to bed now.
All right, everyone.
Well, thank you, Alexa and Nancy, so much for this opportunity. Y'all are the best.
Oh, this has been fun. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, everybody. Enjoy your teen.